Fitness is one of those things that's typically on our want to do list. It's always one of those things that we want to spend more time on. We want to do X, Y, or Z when it comes to a physical goal or a physical achievement. And we have to ask ourselves, if this is so important to us and it's always on our want to do list, why do we keep putting it off? Why, whenever we know how important life is when it comes to having a healthy and capable physical body, do we keep putting off exercise? Do we keep putting off taking care of our own bodies? So we have to ask ourselves these questions. And we also have to ask ourselves, why do we fail whenever we try to incorporate that into our lives? What's going on here whenever we try to do this and we try to be better when it comes to our own exercise and wellness? What's happening whenever we fail or we quit 1 to 2 months into the new year, whenever we have these new resolutions or these new ideas that we want to attain? So that's what I want to talk about today. Before we talk about the actual tactical approaches that I like to take when it comes to maintaining fitness as a priority in life, I want to talk about goals for a second, because I think it's really important that we start off on the right foot and we have the right mindset whenever it comes to embarking on any new achievement. A common error I see a lot of people do is what I like to call the goal fallacy. Now, I've talked about this before, but the goal fallacy is simply the idea that we set these goals and these objectives that are far too out of reach for what we can attain in a year. Yet our expectation is that we're going to achieve these goals within the year. And whenever we come to the realization, whether it be 1 month, 2 months, or even 6 months down the line, that these goals probably aren't going to be attained within the time frame that we set for ourselves, we give up on them and we tend to go back to our old passive selves. We resort back to a lazier version because it's simpler and we realize that the goal is not achievable. And I want to make sure that people understand that setting the goal is not the problem. We need to keep very lofty goals because they are kind of a north star in what we want to achieve in a certain area of our life. That's very important because it keeps us going to be a higher version and a better version of ourselves. But what we also need to maintain is some realism and being realistic about what our approach is towards these goals. We have to know that we always overestimate what we can do in a year, but we far underestimate what we can do in a decade or a longer time horizon. So being realistic about how long it's going to take us to achieve these goals that we set out for ourselves is going to be the first step to having success in maintaining physical fitness as a priority in your life. So with an understanding that the goal fallacy is really a problem that we have when it comes to setting our own goals, and that our expectations of what we can achieve in a year are typically skewed in that we don't see how long it usually takes something, we need to think about what tactical approaches can we take to maintain consistency and maintain our continued effort. Now, there's 3 typical approaches that I take when it comes to looking at having a consistent approach on a day-to-day and week-to-week basis while striving towards these long-term, lofty, and frankly, sometimes they seem like unrealistic goals, because my timeline and the idea that I have behind it is that it's going to take a lot longer than I expect. I know that I have to just commit myself to what my consistent approaches are. So the 3 processes that I like to kind of take when it comes to thinking about having a consistent approach towards these lofty goals, these large goals that we set for ourselves, is 1, to have a consistent approach and a process-oriented mindset. 2 is that we have to make time on our schedule. We can't achieve things if we don't set out time for it. And 3 is that we need to have alternatives and alternative solutions for times whenever things get tough. And I'll kind of talk about each one of those. So having a process-oriented approach is all about understanding that it's the consistent day-to-day and week-to-week efforts that are going to get us one day to those lofty long-term goals. Being realistic and understanding that what we set out for ourselves may take longer than the 6 months or year timeline that we have for ourselves is the first step. The second step is taking those daily actions, making those daily efforts in order to get there. Having a process-oriented approach and maintaining focus on the process of getting there as opposed to what the end outcome is going to help you really maintain consistency and maintain focus in getting better and inching yourself towards your goal. The second piece of making time in your schedule is all about really just carving out the dedicated time that you want to make the effort for. Nothing in life has ever been achieved without making a dedicated commitment to doing it, and that involves ensuring you have time in your day-to-day and in your busy schedule to commit to this practice. The last piece is having alternatives and alternative solutions. And I think this is important no matter what level of athlete you are. I believe all humans are athletes in some way, but having alternatives and different solutions and answers for days when you're not motivated or days whenever your body needs some form of rest or different type of movement is important. No matter who you are and no matter where you are on your journey when it comes to physical fitness, you need alternatives because there are going to be days where you can't perform to the level that you wish you could, but you can get something in, and that's what those alternatives are for.